And let's all clap and let's welcome the panelists on the stage with a high energy because we have more energy in our body now that we have had the lunch. Welcome, sir. We also invite Mr. Narayan Mahadevan, CEO and founder, BridgeLabz Solutions Private Limited. Hearty welcome. Also inviting Ms. Nirmala Datla, Chief Data Science and Engineering Officer, Sasken Technologies. Up next. Let's welcome her, everybody. Hearty welcome, ma'am. Also inviting Mr. Satish R, VP and Business Head Strategic Accounts, South Vodafone Idea Business. Hearty welcome to you, sir. We also invite Mr. Vijay Navaluri, Co-founder and Chief Customer Officer, Superviti AI. A warm welcome to you. Moderating this session is Mr. Umang Sood, the Deputy Sales Head, Dun & Bradstreet, India. Let the panel begin.
So, we have the tough job of keeping you all awake after that amazing lunch and more than awake, being engaged. No GCC summit or no event is complete if you don't do an AI panel. So, while everyone is talking about AI, we'll do it a little bit differently here today. Everyone talks about how AI is helping in cost optimization, how AI is increasing efficiency. I think what we'll try to answer here today is how can you scale AI, right? How can you bring it to more of an enterprise level? And when it actually lands, what is it adding to revenue growth, right? It's more about, we've been talking about AI for a very long time, but where is the payoff, right? The AI promise is there, but where is the AI payoff? When it comes to GCCs, it's a very interesting intersection, right? They're not delivery hubs anymore, right? They want to become owners of data, owners of platform, and owners of innovation. And that raises some very practical questions, right? Which AI use cases are actually moving the needle, right? How do you curate the right data, right, for the right instances and for the right use cases? And how do you scale AI in environments which have fragmented data, legacy systems, and some cross-border dependencies? So we'll explore these questions through real-world perspectives from leaders who are actually shaping how AI is deployed at scale across global enterprises. And we're going to keep it very practical, we're going to keep it honest, and we're going to keep it experience-driven. So all the people that you see here represent platform innovation, they represent data science, connectivity, talent and scale enablement, as well as enterprise transformation. Right? So you couldn't have a better panel to talk about AI at enterprise level. So let's start off. We'll start off with the GCCs first, and Deepak, first question to you. So at Pega Systems, which are the AI use cases which are actually delivering the most measurable impact, value creation, and growth for you?
Yeah, that's a great question in terms of, especially when you start talking about scaling AI systems, right? I think if you look back and think about it as far as how companies have adopted AI, it's like potentially like a gym membership, right? And everyone wants to feel happy that we signed up for gym. It's a completely different matter whether somebody goes there every day or not. But the thing is that everyone will need to do a press release saying their AI. So so that's also something that has resulted in a study. I think the HBR one that I read is where it said about only 4% of the companies have really realized value at scale, which is very different in terms of when you look at the investment that goes into. I think there was another study that talked about, I think you were also mentioning that earlier today, where 40+% of the projects that are done eventually go nowhere, right? They get canceled. So thinking about like your question about 3 use cases potentially, right? Where you will actually see this scale and where we have actually seen it scale. Fortunately, we've been one of those companies who have used AI for the last decade and a half, or what have you. So it hasn't been very new to us. So it was easy to adapt when the entire revolution happened with generative AI, agentic AI, what have you. What we've seen is probably number one is essentially intelligent automation. What I mean by intelligent automation is that every company has workflows, every company has their way to automate things. However, building intelligence into that automation has been one of the key things that we've actually seen scale. Where think of it like you've given a brain that kind of works, or 24/7. It's like a colleague that you have who has nothing but this to do. So what we have seen is actually being able to do that, especially in terms of building design time capabilities through this has been humongous. That's been a big use case that we have seen. Now, one of our customers actually generates approximately about 200 million in ROI every year, where they are communicating with 70 million of their customers through billions of customer engagements. The second use case I would say is really about legacy transformation, which otherwise wouldn't have been possible. Now you have a way to think about it in terms of how to reimagine. There is absolutely no point in taking a COBOL code and turning it into Java if you're doing the same thing that it was doing 40 years ago. The question is, can you actually reimagine that? And in fact, a tool that we actually have called Pega Blueprint allows people to reimagine some of their legacy systems just based on whatever artifacts they might actually have. That is something that we have seen a huge adoption in the market, and it being successful to the extent of we have more than 500,000 blueprints out there in the world today. I think the third thing is really about leveraging agentic architecture. What we mean by agentic architecture is essentially to remove as much of the human element in it as possible while the judgment is still there. The idea of being able to establish leveraging reasoning from what generative AI and agentic AI technology actually provides. That reasoning is essentially resulting in making decisions at scale in terms of being. There are multiple use cases in terms of whether you look at onboarding, whether you look at claims processing, whether you look at customer service, the number of calls that somebody take in terms of how you manage different operational activities, even including something like a call wrap-up for that matter, what have you. Those kind of things are hugely managed by agentic architectures. I think gone are the days where it's a glorified chatbot. I think it is, that's kind of where it's graduated to now, right? So those are probably 3 big things I would say.
So it's not only correcting the current systems, but AI is helping you build and innovate as well.
Absolutely, yeah. Even from a legacy perspective to reimagine that.
Yeah. So, data availability has never been a challenge. But removing the noise and curating the data is what actually takes a lot of efforts. So if, for example, I'm trying to find out my total addressable market in India, it's a very simple question, right? I can go to any one of those platforms and all of them will give me a very different figure, right? But when I come to an expert like DNB, I get data breakdown at the level that I want. So I can know that, okay, there are 44 million businesses in India right now. 33 million of those are active, and around, let's say I'm targeting manufacturing, 9 million are in manufacturing. So it gives me clear-cut answers. Nirmala, I would love to get your opinion on this. what role do partners like Sasken play in aligning data strategy with meaningful AI outcomes? And is it actually an AI problem or is it a data architecture problem?
Actually, most of the AI models, people are realized the effort required on data is almost 70 to 80% than the effort that we need to put on the model. See, even the best models also, they cannot correct if the data is messy. So data quality is very, very critical for any model to be successful. Actually, if you can see, a lot of industries, okay, whether it is telecom or OEMs, okay, OEMs like which develop phones, different wearable devices and all other things, they'll have huge data, some terabytes of data, or maybe sometimes it's much more than that. So for these things, what we need to do is, we need very complete data management is required. That is, all these products will have data in different forms. Some are structured, some are semi-structured, some are fully structured. So from different sources, when we get the data, these need to be curated. So it starts the whole thing from ingestion onwards and cleaning the data, maintaining the thing. Data governance is very critical. And we also need to see that there are no biases. The data what we are taking, if we are taking only from certain reasons, it may not help at all other places. For example, a mobile designed in US thing, data, if it is taking only selected areas, it may not work out in Asian countries or something. So the biases are also we need to paint. So entire data strategy plays a very critical role for making a model successful. For example, some of the things for some of our partners, the way we are doing is, for some of the OEMs, okay, where they get data, they get huge data in the data lake from different sources. From different OEMs, they get data, RF related data, some call drops, and sometimes Wi-Fi connectivity failing, Bluetooth data, and all other things. So that data, it is really, we realize even the hyperscalers were not paying enough attention till they started moving to AI. They were thinking, okay, only when problem comes, then they're paying attention and they're saying what is the problem. But now people realized data needs to be curated before goes to the model. So we are doing complete data pipeline engineering for them, where we provide complete data governance and everything. Similarly, products like industry, where they get data automation. When they're doing automation, it's happening in partially. But now with the data curation and other things, they're able to automate the data. And just imagine now these days, the new technologies, robotaxis. So just see the data, if it is not, quality is not verified, if you are not feeding, these all will run on the AI models, right? So they need different sources of data. They need geographic data, they need different IVI, they're internally within the automobile, what data they have to, how to get and integrate that one. They need to get geo data, and also complete maps they need to have. And all this data, if it is not there, just imagine, will you take a risk to travel in those things? Already, some of these robotaxis, they faced VAM and even Juke, some of these major companies, they had major accidents because data is not curated properly. So now the focus has increased a lot to straighten this data first before going for the models. So this type of support we provide for all our partners. And this is critical in almost any industry, whether healthcare, imagine healthcare, if the diagnostic, if you're doing a wrong data, it's a threat for the life.
Yeah, very sensitive data that you're dealing with in that
that's
segment.
a very critical, data strategy is very critical for any industry.
And you touched upon how data in every region has its own limitations and boundaries as well, which is important to take into consideration when you're, as the topic that we're talking about, going enterprise level scale. So garbage in, garbage out.
Yeah,
important to have your basics right before you even go into AI model.
Sure.
Thank you. So building a robust AI strategy is important, but if you don't have the people to run with it, it kind of fails, right? And Narayan, a lot has been spoken about, GCCs having exceptional talent working for them, and obviously the compensation with that also is aligned. But what is the approach that enterprises are taking towards AI-ready talent? You know, what are they looking at, and how does BridgeLabz help in connect their AI strategy to the right talent?
So I'm going to little bit divulge and then come back to the topic. I think when I see enterprise, right, today AI is predominantly used in in prediction, right, whereas the real AI is in decision making. AI is predominantly used for productivity increase, whereas the AI has to be used in problem solving. So what I'm trying to say is that at enterprise level, using agentic, right? Agentic demands decision making, agentic demands problem solving using AI is a tough thing, right? Because the risks are too higher. So when I look at talent at scale and for AI at scale, I feel that where we should look at is can agentic move from enterprise to mass market, to retail, to SOHO, to MSME, where SaaS has never been successful. It was too broad. So that's the thought process that BridgeLabz had. That can we create use cases there and build real talent from that perspective? So what we did is that, and for all this, right, for agentic world, we need native AI talent. What does native AI talent mean? That you design with AI, you develop with AI, you fight with AI, right? You need youngsters growing with AI, not the the laterals, the 6 million pool that we have who have to adopt AI, right? So thought process was that how do we get into the universities, right? And university has a challenge on its own, where all institutions have been talking about personalized learning path and never been successful. And with AI coming on board, you have the best personalized tutor out there. So what does university should do? So our belief was that university should move from a classroom to a lab, move from teachers, faculty to mentors, and move from actually theoretical delivery to actually real world experimentation, right? So what BridgeLabz does is that it establishes Center of Excellence labs inside the colleges, creates has our engineers working in those centralized, the Center of Excellence labs, just like for a medical college, a hospital is a necessity, right? Where you need to have real patient, real problem. You should have real practicing doctor treating them. In that environment, you can create an environment of practice. That's exactly what BridgeLabz does. So with these engineers, right, and the other end, right, the engineers who involve with us, right, build agentic applications for the retail market, right, and they get credit for that. So they become AI native developers, which the industry can consume. So that's what we do. We create that ecosystem where we have huge AI native developers. On the other hand, they have solved real use cases in the retail market where the penetration is far more easier, decision making is far more easier, adoption is far more easier, so that the enterprise level can get the talent ready from day one. So our belief is to work on the supply side and try to create that scale to ensure that the enterprise gets day one ready talent. So that's essentially the way we have been trying to solve in the last 10 years.
So don't...
Mind if I add something?
Please.
In going through this whole evolution and adoption of AI, one of the things that we've learned to believe definitely over time is humans actually adapt and solve technology pretty easily. It's just a question of time for them to be able to do that. But changing the mindset to be able to do something new is much, much harder. That change is probably, if there is one thing that we should really focus from an academia perspective, is not just to be able to build the technical capability, it's actually being able to really teach the learning capability, to be able to actually adapt the mindset to something new. Like what what you were talking about, for people who have actually worked for years, for like 15, 20 years, I've been a Java developer. Today you're coming and telling me I don't need to write code anymore. We actually don't write code anymore. We don't want people to write code anymore. But that, to think of that, for somebody, I'm not writing code anymore, or what am I going to do the next day morning when I go to work, right? I mean, that's kind of a big, big change that people are grappling with. And that mindset change, I think, is something that, is a fundamental aspect of, for the future.
Can I add to Deepak? And so we set up, Center of Excellence Lab inside the enterprise for lateral talent, and we face the same challenge. So when we set up inside the college, we see that they are in a clean slate. They don't have any legacy to carry with them, right? And they grow with that. So it becomes, and they get that time of 1 year, 2 year to grow. Whereas when we are in the enterprise, setting up that lab, they say that, Narayan, you have 4 to 6 weeks, make them AI native. How can you make in 4 to, so the gap is also not given, the mindset is also not there. So my personal belief is that it should, technology is a level playing field, right? Just doesn't mean that I have 10 years of experience. I am superior than a person who is 1 year experience. Right? So it is going to create that level thing. So our belief is that we need to start working at the grassroots level and build that AI native talent so that enterprise can adopt, right, agentic AI more successfully, rather than just being in a pilot phase or an experimentation phase.
Can I add a quick point here? Actually, as you said, definitely change management is the most challenging thing that all organizations has to face. Definitely people, especially only programmers, they have a fear that they may lose their jobs, they become obsolete. But in the current change, what they need to do is, everyone should behave like a product manager, not just a programmer. So domain knowledge is very critical. Unless a person has a good domain knowledge, they cannot develop an effective model. So that is what we have to tell them, that individuals, they're moving up in the value chain. They're not just coders or testers. They need to understand the domain. Accordingly, they need to develop. That confidence, if we can give them, definitely it helps.
Absolutely. Knowing why they're doing what they're doing, knowing, who the customer is and, why are they doing that. Absolutely agree with you.
And absolutely right from Nirmala's side, because the point of delivery units, have shrunk from 8-10-member team to 2 to 3-member team. And they are expected to deliver the end-to-end product. So if you don't have the domain, you don't have the product management mindset, difficult. Absolutely.
Okay, thank you. So, Vijay, Deepak spoke about tackling down the issue of legacy systems. You guys as partners to GCCs today, where do you come in when it comes to fragmented data, legacy system? What do you suggest to GCCs? What should be their approach if they really want to scale up to an enterprise level?
Absolutely. I was waiting eagerly for my opportunity to speak. I know this is a very tough time to enter the audience. Let's just do a little bit of small thing and then we'll get into this conversation. How many of you, I'm sure many of you are using, how many of you are using ChatGPT or Claude or any of these LLMs? 90%, right? 90%,
90%.
amazing.
Yeah.
How many of you actually built an agent for work? 10%. So I think that's where everything, right? The diffusion has to happen. Now, I think the knowledge is getting democratized. The intelligence is intelligence is application of knowledge into action. That's the place where every company is trying to get to. How do we put this into action? So where we come in, if you look at GCCs today, one of the recent big announcements Super VT has done in Davos with one of the Indian state government, Maharashtra state, very forward thinking, said, you're all attracting GCCs to India. Are we going to tell them that we are going to get more jobs? Are we going to get more people to do the same thing that they've been doing 10 years? Like ma'am said, change management is there from the leadership thinking as well. What are we selling to our own headquarters? What are we selling to our own counterparts when you're talking about setting up a GCC in India? That has to change. Technology is only one part of it. So I think the major area where we come in to help when it comes to data, systems, legacy systems is, look at what people do, what AI can do at any point in time. Every month, things are changing. Maybe you can look at it every quarter. And you really need to have a different team leadership looking at what actually humans should do, what actually AI should do, right? Fundamentally, going forward. It doesn't matter India, US, we need to come out of that thinking because cost arbitrage is not going to be there anymore. Matter of 1 year, 2 years from now. So it's all about tokens, intelligence, everybody has access to it, it's getting diffused. So India is going to be a level playing field with every country. US is going to have a level playing with every country when it comes to doing the run side of the work. So putting 80% should be AI and 20% should be change, humans, when it comes to run part of the business, and change part of the business should be other way around. 80% should be people, 20% should be enabled by AI. So that's what Supraviti does. So we help companies set up these AI GCCs and embed our AI GCC into their existing GCCs. So you can actually build platforms, build your own IP and take it to customers, and we are the partner in the journey for them. So they don't have to reinvent the wheel. Every GCC doesn't have to reinvent the wheel there. So that's how we see, and systems and data, ma'am mentioned a lot about data. I think AI can also play a fundamental role in how data can be cleansed and quality data can be done, everything manually done today. There are novel approaches coming in how you manage data quality from the source systems to the data lakes, actually to the end consuming systems. So every fundamental software engineering process is changing. Like you mentioned, we are not supposed to write code anymore, and there is another problem with that. We have engineers in Supraviti itself where we said nobody's writing code, only AI will write it. Now we are tracing back into some part of where it has to be writing those policies. So designing policies is most important for any AI implement system to scale, right? What humans should do, what AI should do, and how they should collaborate eventually. If we get that right, we can take examples like one of the largest Japanese company, where they were processing all vendor invoices manually earlier. Then we moved them to their department in AI first department. Now 80 to 90% of them is done by AI. But the 10% of work that people do is very much very critical to how they are paying the vendors. And now AI is a force multiplier. No way they can look at every line item earlier. Now AI is a force multiplier. Everything duplicates are being checked. Every deduction being done. They could never do it before. So it's not about replacing people. It's also about qualitative drivers that we are driving with AI as a force multiplier. If you start thinking that way, then we can build IP, which can take it to business outcomes.
Yeah, I think if we can enable the center of excellences with tools like that, they have a larger role to play in the global scale, right? Then they can go about talking that, okay, putting their hands up and say, this is something.
Yeah, we are as global as they are. We are actually more advanced. If you look at our kids, they are AI native. They think AI fast. If I ask any of my colleagues, build some PPT, they will never open a PPT. How many of us open PPT when we have to look at it? We all open PPT first. They'll go to Claude and they build the PPT and throw it in 5 minutes, at least to 99% of it, and then one person will take 5 more days. But, this AI native talent. India has the biggest talent pool in that. So we need to look at how we can build. Why can't we build sovereign LLMs? Why can't we build, functional LLMs and our own areas? And if not LLMs, IP, product solutions. So I think we have the advantage. We need to look at it as on par with any country in the world and become the next IP capital of the world.
Hopefully. So, we talk about scalable AI deployment across continents. So these connectivity and digital infrastructure becomes very important, right? How are enterprises addressing the issue of connectivity? And especially because you're working across global markets, how is Vodafone helping them?
Scalability depends on seamless data flow across geographies, teams, and systems. That might sound very simple. It's not a simple investment mantra that might solve. If I allow to put it in a simple example, it is not like picking up a star player in an IPL team who can't sort of adapt to an Indian condition and play in different pitches, right? So it's complex. So you need to sort of make sure that you have interventions that sort of solves this problem. That's where Vodafone Idea sort of steps in. We help enterprise to build a secure network. We also help them build hybrid SD-WAN. We have smart IoT central platforms. We help digital transformations for their cloud integration and so on. That's very important. I would say AI is no more a technology intervention. It's an intervention that would solve their business problems. So we focus largely on 4 pillars that we think are very, very important to solve their business problems. productivity enhancement, cost optimization, uh, employee efficiency, and AI-led network and IT operations that can be managed. We feel if we are able to touch upon these four elements, largely the business problems by itself get solved. That's where we sort of step in and work with the enterprises to sort of co-create solutions, and we see huge outcome that sort of helps them drive one of these four pillars that they are trying to do. Couple of examples are IoT Central sort of helps large enterprise to collect disintegrated data across the globe and brings it onto a platform which sort of analyzes and gives them real-time benefits that sort of helps them to put decision making that much more easier. Why our own network, a large network like Vodafone Idea across the globe, 30% of the network gets managed today by AI agents. That helps our network engineers to move from a reactive network monitoring to a very, very proactive network monitoring situation. That sort of gives a excellent uptime to the customers. Self-repairing networks are an example that I would say most of the enterprise today is sort of adopting to. That helps them to give a wow experience to the customer. To simplify this, I would say that digital data movement seamlessly across various platforms, which is sort of giving them a real-time view of what's happening, is the key in sort of achieving what you want to finally achieve, implementing any AA intervention. That's what we sort of enable the customers.
You know, so this was discussed in some of the earlier panels as well, and we were having this discussion on a survey that DNB did on 40% of AI initiatives remain in the pilot phase, while only 15% reach their full implementation. So what we're seeing is AI experimentation seems to be easy, but operational transformation is kind of the hard part, right? So what are the biggest barriers, and I'll open it up for anyone who wants to take it. What are the biggest barriers that organizations actually face? Do they just want to dip their hands into AI and not probably scale it up? Is it a people problem? Is it a mindset problem? What is it?
Well, I think I might go there. Just from a little bit of a humor perspective, right? I don't know how many of you guys have seen a game called Whack-A-Mole. It's essentially you have a hammer, right? And then something keeps popping up, and you keep hitting that that goes back into the hole. It seems like a lot of companies did that, and that is the resultant of they have a hammer called AI, and every problem they see, they feel they have to use that hammer, whether it is required or not. And then that, I think, is kind of what is resulted in a state where you have these plethora of, projects that really never needed, in terms of being able to, have a return on investment of you investing in being able to do it. So it's really thinking about outcome of what you're actually driving towards and what you want to achieve, I think helps a lot in.
AI is not the solution to every problem, is that?
Can I add something? Yeah, actually it is true. Doing POCs is easy. People think once they start scaling up, it can be done. But actual problem starts there. One is compliance. Security compliance, when we put it on the main network, which we need to take care of it, that is one. And other one is, even though we feel, when we do a POC, especially for, if it is a new code, green code, definitely we see very good efficiency, 30%, 40%, for test cases, 50 to 60%. But when you are doing this on a legacy system, which is already there, where you need, whenever you're doing a changes there, the impact, you need to understand the impact, and when you are doing the changes, the efficiency what we get, what I have seen in my experience practically in some of the systems is not more than 10-15%. So that is the time when people realize it is not that easy to scale it up. And other thing is the horsepower it needs to do that one, AI power. Actually, when we are doing the ROI, most of the time we are only seeing the effort efficiency, how much we are saving, but we are really forgetting how much we are paying for the infrastructure and the license cost and all other things. This is something that is blocking some of the companies to scale it up. They're paying they're really concerned about it when it comes to that. And other thing is, the major thing, we want to go green. Okay, we want to reduce the power consumption, but whereas what's happening in the current thing is, wherever we are trying to implement Gen AI, the required horsepower is much higher than what we are doing. So these are some of the practical constraints that is doing. But for a new company which are starting now, then definitely it is better. But if you are doing changes on existing systems, it's not that effective. That's my experience.
My belief is that, you know, if enterprise really wants to put a agentic out there, you know, naturally they can't do it in a front-end system, very risky. They should try to do, like you talked about, intelligence automation, right? They should try to do it in where, you know, operation efficiency can be brought, where there are maker and checker system that sets in. So maker is done by an agentic and a checker is a physical human, and kind of build that confidence, right, before you actually try to start thinking. So I agree with you. You need to choose what you want to actually build the agentic stuff on, right? And I truly believe it should be agentic, because if we are not harnessing the decision-making power, then what's the point of doing it? If we are not using the memory that agentic system uses to make the decision, what's the point of doing that? So that is where, you know, my two cents thought is.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I especially think of regulated industries for that matter, right? If you're doing it in banks, they better be, you know, predictable systems that you do. Today, any CIO I talk to, they actually say they've finished all of their, you know, AI investment in Q1. You know, it all went to what you were talking about, Nirmala, right? In terms of the power consumption, number of tokens. They've already used all the tokens for the entire year. Now they're short of budget to be able to do any more AI, right? So building enterprise systems is not, you know, pilots are much different than building enterprise systems. To Nirmala's point, I mean, how do you build all the governance required in enterprise systems? It's okay to go ahead and generate some code using one of the LLMs, but it's not actually going to give you an enterprise level system.
I believe the solution, AI solutions, has to be built at an enterprise fabric, which can be like done at a very, very functional in silo. It doesn't work, right? POCs most time, I think we are moving away from that, but is focused on input rather than people focusing on the exact output, what it can deliver. That's where this problem comes up in terms of creating AI solutions at a individual function level, rather than creating a solution which can cut across functions and at a fabric level. I think we are moving away from that. I see recent solutions being developed which can be built on an enterprise fabric which talks to various functions, and it talks about a common business objective that it can address. The more we get into that, I think we will very soon get away from this concept of only doing POC to getting real-time use case on AI. That's my 2 cents on that.
Can I just add one more thing? Please. So I want to second what Nirmala said, right? A newer company, newer business can actually experiment. And that's where I believe that AI should democratize and go into the smaller markets where SaaS could not penetrate. And I think that's the area, if we can see more things happening, it will become more interesting. Because there's not much risk, there's not much compliance, there is not the power consumption because there's no huge data there. So it's far more simpler to get there and create real production system there.
So, Vijay, last question to you. AI is becoming more mature. You can see the conversations are becoming more mature. We're talking about scalability, enterprise level. With that, what comes in is IP creation, product development, sustainable innovation cycles. So in a world of instant gratification, is it easier said than done?
Absolutely. I think as a company, as an individual living every day, building production-grade enterprise AI systems and solution deploying with them, fortunate to be in that 4% where we could take some of them into production, where our AI employees now are actually processing $25 billion worth of payments, every line item with the compliance and regulation across 10 different countries. So we're living and breathing this. IP, and the overall, the challenge is definition of IP is changing. Earlier, we all used to think having patents is IP, intellectual property. As you know, all the Gen AI, it's all about writing a nice paper about what new innovation way of you're doing, building models, you're training new stuff, like what did DeepSeek did it. So the change, IP is about now, how are we building something for 2 years, 5 years down the line, and are we really putting all our energy in doing that, right? So India obviously has a different mindset in terms of application of the IP than creating the IP. So AI can really change that, right, and bridge that gap for all of us. And I'm just talking India, the context here, because India, this is the India forum and we have India GCC system here. So I think the GCCs in India can rethink what IP, what they're building, and how we are doing it in SuperVD here. Most of our engineering team, we are a US-based company. Most of our engineering team is in Mumbai and Hyderabad. And we are building a world-class product for global companies to build their AI back office. AI agentic systems and all that. One of the customer where we went live with, actually, he spoke in the morning, first session, 72 AI agents working together in live production, orchestrating, making, this $20 billion worth of payments, right? So I think the IP has to be futuristic and enterprise grade. And if we can think there's a lot of leadership here, a lot of leadership in the India, and there is a lot of talent, they just have to come together and think, okay, 5 years down the line, what is that, and put the journey here. Then you will be able to, build scalable systems. And we have enough experience. IT services companies are there who have seen the world, deployed digital systems before, right? And I just want to close with one important point that anybody comes with what agentic AI can do, give me use cases. That I'm a little biased towards AI here, obviously, but we need to think differently there as well. AI is not one more technology. It's the data taking form into action. So you cannot think like this is one more ERP system, digital transformation. This is like internet moment, right? There are pre-internet companies, post-internet companies. AI will be like that, post-AI company. So you got to think a little differently there and build IP towards. Take AI very seriously as not one more technology. You should really take the hammer and think everything should be done by AI, and otherwise you should put a human. That's how you have to think. Otherwise we'll be like pre-internet companies eventually. So that's my take on it. So now don't think use cases, think role basis. This can be human role based, this can be AI role based in a company. That's how we champion it for customers and make them think how you deploy AI in a company. In governance, in human always should be in the command. We call it human in command, right? In self-driving tech, you should be able to take a wheel on your own anytime you want. Yeah.
The way things are changing, and Nirmala, you mentioned about change management, right? I think if we do this session a month down the line, I don't know how things would have evolved. So I think change management and including AI in the ecosystem, right? Not really adopting it, but making it a part of daily pieces. I think that's what's coming out very, very strongly. Any questions from the audience? No? Good. Great. So we wind it up. Any last thoughts, guys, on where we are at and where we will be?
I just want to thank you very much for a great interactive, great audience panel, all of them.
I think the fundamental thing to realize is the rate of change. I think is what is phenomenally different than what we have ever been through in the history of changes. This change is that way a lot different than what we have gone through. Whether it is microprocessors, whether it was cloud, whether it was internet, whether it is, nothing moved as fast as what this technology is moving in that direction. I think fundamentally that is the bigger difference. And we just need to figure out, there is really no point in creating a 3-year, 5-year roadmap anymore, right? So so that mindset, I think, is the one thing I would like to leave the audience with is to keep that in mind and how to
need to keep it fluid as possible, as much as possible.
Yeah, that is true. It's like a tsunami. All other technologies took 10 years and other things to come to stay. But here, almost everyday things are changing, right? If you don't read about it for 2 days, you feel you are upset. Yeah.
If you ask cloud, not many people would raise their hand, right? ChatGPT, how many people raise their hand?
Yeah.
So that's the level of...
Yeah, exactly. To move to cloud, a lot of enterprises hesitated for a long time. But now, if you don't adapt, you will be the loser. So we need to adapt, whatever it is. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Thank you all.
Thank you very much for keeping it very engaging.
Thank you. Thank you. That was yet another insightful panel discussion. Thank you to the panelists. We are taking a moment to extend our gratitude for your presence and for sharing your thoughts. Mr. Sood will be doing the honors and presenting the panelists with mementos. Let's all keep clapping for all the panelists and their incredible minds that they have shared with us through their ideas and thoughts on diverse topics today. Requesting all of you to pose for a group photograph. Thank you. Thank you so much.